Hello, my name is Karen Gondoli, and I am the CEO of LeoStream. Today, I want to talk about data sovereignty. It used to be that implementing zero trust principles was the big buzz phrase, and obviously that is still very important. But I've noticed that the conversation is shifting to focus on the data those zero trust principles are securing. So, data sovereignty, like zero trust, it's a principle. But now we're talking about the principle that data is subject to the laws and governance of the country or maybe jurisdiction where it's created, stored, or processed. I did, in fact, read that because I wanted to make sure you understood it exactly. Now, for IT teams, that means it matters who can access data, where is that data physically residing, and which laws apply to it. And that's particularly true for hybrid workforces that may span countries because all of these countries seem to have slightly different sets of laws that govern data protection. Now, if you have a hybrid workforce, and that could be on-prem and remote users, and maybe even a hybrid infrastructure with a mixture of on-prem and cloud, ensuring data sovereignty, it starts to subject you to certain design constraints. You need to, for example, take into account that your users and their devices may cross jurisdictions. Then those devices the users have, they could be a mixture of both personal and corporate endpoints, particularly if your organization allows BYOD. And then finally, providing adequate performance for your workforce may mean building a hybrid infrastructure that spans cloud regions, and maybe those regions are crossing country boundaries. So, as you design for data sovereignty, what are some of the pitfalls that you need to keep in mind? Well, first, where data is stored really matters. If you're working in the cloud, ensure that data remains in the appropriate region and cannot inadvertently be transferred out. For example, maybe the user tries to transfer it to their local device, or maybe it's getting replicated across these cross border cloud regions. You really need to make sure that that doesn't happen. Keep in mind that even if data stays in a particular country, though, remote access from another country may trigger compliance violations itself. So, for remote workers, you need to ensure that you implement strict role based access controls that are tied to their location. And of course, if you need to prove compliance, you need to know who is accessing what from where. So, how do you architect to avoid these pitfalls? Well, luckily and conveniently, there are solutions out there where you can build centralized digital workspace environments. You can call that VDI, you can call that DAS, you can call that rack workstations in your data center, whatever that means for you. You centrally locate the digital resources that customers, your end user, are going to access, and the data that those workspaces are going to use. And then you make sure that the access control platform that is managing your digital workspaces does not allow local data to transmit to users' endpoints. Obviously, you also want to, talking about zero trust, implement strong authentication into those environments along with MFA and least privileged access. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure you're gating remote access in a way that's location aware. And finally, of course, audit level logging. You need to monitor who is accessing what data, where that user is, how long they've got access to that data, and of course, monitor if they're trying to transmit the data and block that transmission as possible. Now, conveniently, as I mentioned, there are tools that will help you do this, and LeoStream provides one of them. So let me show you some of the things that the LeoStream platform allows you to do that helps you really ensure data sovereignty. Now, in a lot of my demos, I focus on the end user experience, but I'm going to skip the end user experience here. You can look at a different video and just talk about what, as an admin, can IT do to ensure data sovereignty. So here I'm logging into the LeoStream Connection Broker as the main administrator, and some of the things I want to point out. We talked about strict authentication with MFA. You have many different options within LeoStream to implement that. Obviously, username, password with Active Directory. If you want to use your corporate identity provider, such as Okta or Entra ID, to gate access to the LeoStream environment, you can do that via SAML. If you are using username, password, you have MFA options with either Duo or any MFA provider that supports Radius. So Okta, Ping ID, again, the options are nearly endless. And the one other thing that I'll point out before I go any further here is that this environment, the connection broker, the gateway, any component for your LeoStream environment is fully hosted by you. So data is never transferring over to LeoStream. You control where the data associated with your LeoStream environment is at all times, and you can architect to ensure that you're meeting your data sovereignty goals. So in addition to architecting that in your own environment and setting up the authentication that you require, now we got to talk about where are you sending your users based on, again, the location those users are at. With a LeoStream environment, it's very easy to architect hybrid environments, be that on-prem, across clouds, across regions, and ensure users get access to the correct region based on who they are and where they are. So first is the what am I connecting users to? And that comes from what we call centers. Now, LeoStream supports a number of centers, which are essentially hosting platforms for your digital workspaces. So maybe you want to be in AWS, maybe Google, maybe Azure. You have a variety of different on-prem solutions as well. The key is you can manage all of those different solutions across all your different regions from this one interface. And then you'll see here, I have Amazon Web Services in EU, happens to be in Ireland. And then also Amazon Web Services in US East, happens to be Virginia. And I can control access from this one platform here. The way I can provide remote access to all those different regions is through the LeoStream gateway. The LeoStream environment is architected in a way that makes it very easy for you to not just have control of your data, but also have control of which LeoStream gateway you pass users through based on the resource they have access to. So in my environment, I have built out so far a LeoStream gateway that provides access into AWS US East, and then that one that provides access into on-prem. And what I can do through your DNS and all the magic networking is send users through specific gateways to log into my LeoStream environment. And then if I know a user who's on-prem is coming from the on-prem gateway, and a user who's going through the AWS US East gateway is in those regions, then I can connect them to the appropriate resources for those regions. So to do that, if I come down to configuration, you see here we have this concept called locations. And then a location can be anything but that you essentially want it to be. It's just a group of clients. But here I'm saying that my on-prem location are users logging in through the on-prem gateway, whereas my remote US East location is users logging in through my AWS East gateway. And then what I did up in pools is I created pools of, in this case, everything in my US East region. And then I can create subpools that I know are guaranteed to be from US East based on the different use cases or workflows that I happen to have. So in my case, I have one to connect using DCB. My on-prem machines then, you notice here, I have a few environments on-prem, so I just gathered all of my on-prem machines into one pool. And then again, using subpools, I can break them down into use case, whatever works best for your environment. Now, then what I can do is I create policies for the different locations that I want. And ultimately, I assign those policies to users based not only on who they are, but also where they come from. So now if a user logs in from the on-prem gateway, they get the on-prem policy, access to my on-prem pools. If they come in from the US East gateway, then they're going to the AWS US East regions there. So that was just a really quick example of one of the ways that you can leverage LeoStream to help you architect an environment that complies with all your data sovereignty needs. If you have any questions, you want any more information, you can contact us at LeoStream at info@leostream.com. Thank you.